Welcome to TigerComp. This is looking at Word 3, focusing on columns. We're going to start by really looking at a number of things of review, looking at page layout and changing the margins. And so going here, creating a custom margin, and changing it to 0.5 on all the sides except for the bottom, which is going to be 0.6. And so we're going to just change these real quick. And if you have the tutorial in front of you, I would just go ahead and read the directions there. If you don't have the tutorial in front of you, I'd probably stop the video and make sure I have the paper in front of me, because you're going to need it in just a little bit when we get to the next section. So now that I've changed my margins, I'm going to go ahead and change my font size. Right, font. I want it size 48, and I want to be in Times New Roman. And then I'm going to go ahead and center align this, and I'm going to write no more hot lunch. Now at this point, I'm going to turn on symbols just so I can kind of see what I've been typing. And if I press the Enter key twice, you would see that the font size stays the same when I'm pressing Enter. And it stays at 48 point font. Now obviously I'm wasting a lot of paper here. And so what you can do is, after you're done typing and you really just want little spaces in between this, you can change your font size back down. I'm going to change it back down to 12. If I press Enter 2 times, suddenly it's far less space being used up to do this. All right, now I'm already center aligned. I'm going to write by, and then it's going to, the directions say to type your name here, so obviously I'm going to type my name, and there we go. And this is where you get to the next part. Says press Enter 2 more times, 1, 2, and your paper should look something like this at this point. And pull out the tutorial now, because it asks you to type a paragraph finishing with this line. Also, I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm not going to force you to watch me type this, but you can go ahead and pause the video for a minute and get that paragraph into your page. Alright, so you should have typed up this paragraph, including this line also. In a minute we're going to see why having a line there like that, or having that extra space, is very important when it comes to creating columns, especially when you have different sections. Like we have this section right here, which is our first section. We have this section here, which we're about to transform into columns. And we have this section here, which helps us to be able to put columns in this second section without modifying anything above it or anything we would want to put below it. All right, to do columns, what we want to do is we want to select the paragraph like that. We're going to go to Page Layout, and then here you have a nice column called Columns. And so by clicking Columns, you have lots of options, 1, 2, 3, left, right, and you can do lots of different things here. We're actually going to go with 3 columns here, and quickly changes that. But let's take just a moment to look at the different options you get when you go to more columns and you get this dialog box that pops up. Obviously you see the preset columns, and in this section right here we see lots of options which become really important when it comes to using columns, and we're about to play around with this a little bit to make sure that we get a really good understanding of how to do columns. Often it's very easy, depending on what your project might be, to just do one of the presets, but sometimes you need to do things a little bit differently just to make sure things fit the right way, or just to look very nice. So let's take a look at this menu. All right, by looking down here at our menu for columns, we see that there are lots of different options you can do here. You can actually go in and specifically change the columns to fit what you want them to be, very specific things. Now, one of the key things is looking at this box right here. It says equal column width. So if I try to adjust this one, it's going to adjust all of them, the spacing, everything like that. And sometimes that's a really good thing. But if I want my columns to each be different, I actually have to uncheck this box. All right, so I'm gonna cancel the start just so I make sure I don't do those changes that I just made. So I have this 2.17 and 0.5. So I'm going to uncheck this box. I'm going to go here and I'm going to change this to just 2. And then I'm going to change my spacing to 0.4. And you can see everything else adjusts by itself because it wants to go with those 3 columns and work with it. But this is going to be an important thing to remember, especially when it comes to the test on all this stuff, which is coming up very soon. All right. The other thing that we see in this menu is we see apply to. What do we want all these changes we just made apply to? And so you have 3 different ideas. You have the selected text. So right now, obviously, this is in gray. So do I want just that? Selected sections. That can serve in a very, very similar way. Sometimes it just means from this point on, or that different idea, or you could do the whole document, right? And you can get little previews of what all of them looks like in your preview box over here. I'm just going to go selected text because that's what we need. And if you follow the directions, you should have something that looks like this within your width and spacing by the time you're done with this section. All right, so as we look at this, now we have this wonderful set of columns. And you might be asking yourself, well, what about this line right here? Why was that there? And once again, remember how we just wanted this to be in columns. If this line wasn't here, when we would have selected all of this and gone to columns, the page, Word would have said, okay, fill up the column. And it would have taken all of these words and gone straight down with it. I'll demonstrate what I mean. So if I select everything and go to 3 columns, now you see things start moving in funny ways, and things aren't really done the way you want them to be done. And I can even go all the way back to here and go like this. And so you got some funny things going on. Sometimes it'll actually go all the way just almost like 1 column, and it won't even consider the other things that you have on there, and things don't work. It seems like 2013 tries to fight this and help you out a little bit, but understanding this columns thing is going to be very important. All right, so we just select what we want selected. All right, I'm going to fix my stuff and we'll get back to the. All right, now that we've made the columns, we can actually get rid of this line because obviously it has nothing to do with what we're trying to do in this short little article that's being made. But what we can see is, as you're looking at our 3 columns, we're starting to see these big spaces like right here, and that's not because of spacebar, it's creating columns. And it's not really the neatest look that you can do. And so one of the easy things you can do, even if your paper isn't looking exactly like the tutorial paper, hopefully it's looking like mine, what we can do is we can use what's called the hyphen feature. And to do that, right, you can kind of select your text and you go back to page layout and you see hyphenation right here. And you can either do automatic, you can do manual. Automatic is of course what we want to use in this case. And now you can see how it very quickly spread things out in a much more even way. Here's our one hyphenated section like that. And now you don't really have these big spaces like you did before. You might argue a little bit here, you might argue a little bit here, but it wasn't as bad as what we had before. And so it can really be a nice thing. Newspapers do this all the time because they're trying to save space and they don't want to waste space, because obviously another page of the newspaper is more money that they have to spend because they're not going to charge more for the paper. It's really part of that formatting concept that goes into really any type of paper that you do, because you do want to conserve space but still make it easy for readers to understand what is going on. All right, so if you're using the tutorial in front of you, you're going to see that some of the pictures aren't going to match exactly what's on the screen right here, but as I just did this tutorial right in front of you using 2013, you know that this is exactly how it should look when you are done. And so with that being said, we're going to say goodbye for this tutorial, and you can hand this in and get things done. If you are curious about how you're going to be scored, here is a quick look, right? So I'm looking at fonts, um, alignments, I'm looking at your margins, I'm looking at going back to the 12-point font, your name, correct paragraph, the columns. I will look at the menu to see that you changed these things the right way, and then having that hyphenation put in there also, and then just really the easy points of just making you hand it in. This would be saving it to Office 365. All right, that's it for Word 3. Make sure you really understand these concepts and the concepts from the last 2 tutorials, because next week you're going to come back and we're going to take a test on Word 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to kind of combine those ideas together and learn how to use those to reinforce what you've learned and see if you really understand how to do all these different things that you've learned so far. Okay, that's it for Word 3.